Alright guys, it's Charlie Tango 1994 back with another YouTube video. Over the last few months I've been doing a series of videos about new CB radios that can be purchased nowadays and spent some time focused on dual mode radios that cover the standard FM and AM modes across Europe. Now I plan to get hold of a number of new sideband or multimode radios that cover SSB, CW and other modes that are not included in the dual mode radios we've been looking at previously. To kick off this series, let's take a closer look at my Anytone 5555, which I've had as my home base rig for about 3 years now. The 5555 has been around for a number of years and has since been superseded by the 5555N, but is still available to buy today. In terms of cost also, it's one of the cheapest sideband radios out there compared to the other rigs that are available brand new. You will also see identical rigs branded as the CRT Superstar SS6900, which, as I say, is identical to the 5555. I've been very impressed with this rig as it has a lot of functions and features, and like a lot of the high-end rigs, is programmable to hit other frequencies, including the 10 meter band, although I've only ever used it on 11 meters. There's no shortage of knobs and buttons on the Anytone, as well as a number of menu-driven settings under its bonnet, so let's take a closer look at it. In terms of controls, what the Anytone gives us is 6 knobs, of which 3 of them are twin pots, plus the channel selector, and 8 buttons to the left of the display, of which each of them carries 2 functions. In addition, there are a number of menu-driven settings within the software, which we'll take a look at in a moment. Powering on the Anytone is done with the first knob, which also controls the volume. The collar on this knob is your squelch control. Next to that is your echo control, which can be useful to add some depth to your voice transmissions. You can adjust the length of the echo as well as the tone of the echo with this knob. Next to that is your RF gain, with the collar controlling your RF power. Next to that is the band selector, covering bands A through to F, which spans 27601 MHz through to 28295 MHz as standard, although as I say, this can be programmed to other frequencies if required. Next along is your mode selector, which allows you to switch from FM to AM, lower sideband, upper sideband, and CW, as well as accessing the PA or public address feature. The last knob is your clarifier for sideband. The clarifier knob also has a push button feature, which enables you to adjust the amount of shift adjustment on your frequency. The large knob on the Anytone is, as you would expect, your channel selector, where the Anytone has a channel indicator as well as a frequency meter on the display. Looking now at the buttons on the Anytone, we have the Roger Bleep on-off, the A&L and noise blanker, and your dual watch feature, which allows you to monitor 2 channels at the same time. Along the bottom is the scan button, a 10K shift, the SWR button, and the EMG or emergency button, which takes you directly to channel 9. Another nice feature of the Anytone is the fact that it has an integrated SWR meter, which we'll look at in more detail later. As I say, each button carries an additional function, which you can access by first pressing the function key. This then gives you access to key beep, which the Anytone comes with enabled out of the box and will be the first feature you're likely to turn off. Personally, I don't see any benefit of hearing it beep every time you touch something. Next along is the key lock button, which, as the name suggests, locks all of the buttons on the radio except the PTT button on the mic. The last button along the top allows you to turn off the display, which could be useful to conserve battery or to prevent distractions when driving. Along the bottom there's the search list button, which allows you to select or actually omit which frequencies you want to use when in scan mode. Next along is the high cut function, which knocks out the hiss in your receive signals. Next along is the TOT button, which controls the time to talk feature. This means you can set the amount of time the radio will transmit for. I would say this is a relatively redundant feature, but if you're the kind of person who hangs on the mic, this will cut your transmission after a specified period if you've got the PTT button on the mic held down for a prolonged period. The last button on the Anytone is the signal RF button, which switches on the signal meter on the display. One of the nice things about the Anytone is the fact that it has both a channel indicator and a frequency meter, which makes finding the right frequency that much easier. All of the features we've looked at are also shown on the display when activated, so again, this makes navigating the controls that much easier. We mentioned the SWR meter on the Anytone, which as we saw is accessed by one of the buttons. When transmitting, your SWR is displayed in large numbers on the display when you key up. I've always been a bit suspicious of integrated SWR meters, but at least on my rig, the figures aren't too far from accurate when I've tested with a separate SWR meter. What is great about the Anytone is that it has both SWR and power protection. So if your SWR is off the scale because of a faulty feed cable or something, or if you're drawing too much power, the radio will automatically stop transmitting, something that could be very useful on a rainy DX trip in a soggy field. Having looked at the main features of the Anytone, let's now look at some of the settings under the menu. You access these settings by long pressing the function key. The first setting is your step, which can be adjusted from 10 Hz up to 10 kHz. As we said previously, this can also be adjusted by repeatedly pressing the clarifier knob. The next setting is your clarifier control, which can be changed to adjust your receive frequency, just your transmit frequency, or both. By default, RT is enabled, which adjusts both the receive and transmit frequency at the same time. The next setting affects what happens when you push the clarifier button in. This can be set to coarse, which, when turning the clarifier now, adjusts both the receive and transmit frequency, T, which adjusts only the transmit frequency, and STP, which allows you to adjust the degree of tuning used by the clarifier knob we saw previously. By default, this function is enabled. The next setting is your automatic squelch, which can be switched on or off as required. Next is the time to talk function, which you can adjust from 30 seconds up to 10 minutes, or turned off. When enabled, an audible bleep will sound and the radio will cease transmission if you keep the mic key down for longer than the allocated time. The scan function can be changed with the next setting. By default, the radio will continue scanning again 5 seconds after a received signal ends, where TI will allow the radio to continue scanning after 5 seconds whether a signal is still being received or not. The next setting switches on or off the SWR protection we mentioned earlier. If the radio is getting an SWR of 10 or over, the radio will stop transmitting and the SWR protection error will display on the screen. The next setting is your power protection, which can be turned off and on. Again, the radio will display an error if there's a significant drop in power or a sharp power surge to protect the radio. The next setting controls what is shown on the display when transmitting. This can be your transmitted frequency, your SWR reading, or the time remaining if you have the time to talk feature enabled. Next is your Roger bleep control. This allows you to adjust the frequency of your Roger bleep, either a lower or higher tone, depending on what you prefer. You can also adjust the length of the Roger bleep, which means you can adjust it to something that is particular to only your radio, and would give you a unique Roger bleep, which is nice if you use your Roger bleep a lot and people start to recognize you from your Roger bleep. The last two settings relate to CW, allowing you to adjust your side frequencies, allowing you to match the side frequency of another CW operator.
On my radio there are some additional settings which don't appear in the user manual. These are the mic gain and the talkback feature, which allows you to hear your own voice when transmitting, plus two other settings but I've not been able to find out what they do. If you know what these settings cover, why not leave a comment and let others know?
As I say, there's a lot going on with this radio, especially when you consider you can get one of these brand new for not a lot more than £100. On the downside, the design of the radio is a little dated, and there are better looking rigs out there, but they are likely to be a lot more expensive. I hear a lot about the quality of the standard mic, and I know a lot of people who swap it out for alternative mics. The build quality of the mic isn't great, and it feels a bit plasticky in the hand. It also is pretty small in the hand compared to other mics, but I've not had any real problems with it. As with a lot of mics, it has the channel selector buttons on it as well as the automatic squelch button, and that lets you turn the ASQ on and off as well as change channel without needing to touch the radio. Certainly a safer way to operate your radio when driving. All in all, I really like the Anytone, although there are more powerful rigs out there that might be considered better looking, but as an entry-level radio, I would say you get a lot for your money. If you're looking for the most affordable way to get into sideband radio, then this would be an ideal rig for you. No doubt, once you get a taste for sideband, you can always upgrade to a more powerful radio later on down the line. I'll be back with another sideband radio soon, so I'll say 7 threes for now, and I'll see you again in another YouTube video. Cheers guys.